Hello, Anicod here, and today I thought I'd make an updated version of the farming guide video. We'll be revisiting all the items to do with farming, all the electrical components. I'll show you how to wire them up, what they do, and hopefully answer any questions the last video raised. So let's get straight into it then. We'll start with the components. And first things first, you need somewhere to plant your seed. Alright, get your head out the gutter, I mean seeds for plants. The large planter is effectively 3 small planters glued together, and it gives you 9 spots to plant your crops, which means the small planter is 1/3 of the size. This gives you 3 places to plant. These are good for small solo bases, a little easier to maintain, and you have more control over the area you're putting them in compared to the large planters. We have to make sure the crops are watered, and for this we need sprinklers. You can link these together and you can put these on walls or ceilings to water your crops. You do need somewhere to store the water. The sprinklers don't just make water from thin air. For this you need a water barrel. I called it a Bowser last time and I got ripped apart, so I'm sorry, okay, still gonna call it a Bowser. You will need a way to get the water into a barrel. The easiest thing for this is a water pump. If you live near the sea and only have access to salt water, don't worry, Rust has a way. You can use a water purifier for this. Now don't worry, I'll talk you through all this stuff and show you how it works. If you're new on the server, there's a more primitive way you can turn salt water into fresh, and that's with a purifier. With this one, all you do is place it over a campfire. The campfire will burn off the salt water, turning it into fresh. This was originally put into the game as a way to drink fresh water, but now it's got a new use. Once you get the supply of fresh water you need to get this water pumped up into the sprinklers. For this, you'll need a switch and pump. Now this is just one unit, and all you do is plug in a little bit of electricity, and that's enough to get the water flowing. If you've got an intricate farm, you can split your water supply 3 ways through the use of a fluid splitter. Works the very same way as an electrical splitter. If you want something that combines water from multiple sources, then Rust has this covered too, and for this you'd use a fluid combiner. Now these are useful if you've got multiple pumps, for example, and you want to pump them into one barrel I mean. Alright, don't shoot me. Now in Rust, water isn't enough to make healthy crops. Another thing you'll need is good quality mud. For this you can use fertilizer. Simply place the fertilizer in your planters and you're golden. You can use a composter to make fertilizer. All you have to do is put food inside, play the waiting game, and the food will turn into fertilizer for you to use on your crops. There's also other ways you can get fresh water. One is by using water catchers. They do come in 2 sizes, small and large. They can be placed outside to automatically gather fresh juice. They both output 20 milliliter per second, but the large just gathers water a little bit faster, that's all. Now let's have a look at the components. If you press R while the components are out, you can rotate them. The items we're looking at the minute are small planters, and as you can see, the large is just 3 planters glued together as I mentioned before. You can see the large planter holds 9,000 water, the small holds 3,000, so let's start working on getting water to these planters. We'll start with the water catchers. So when you place the water catchers, remember they need to be placed outside to work. The large is huge compared to the small, so make sure you've got enough space before you start placing them. You will need a pipe tool to link the water components together. You only need 1 tool, and you can use this as many times as you want. Early in the update, you had to look at the ground level when placing the water components, because if you link the water downhill, you won't need a pump, but if you link the components above one another, you would need a pump. This is no longer the case, as I'm going to demonstrate here. Another thing to take into account is the fact people can steal your water from these catchers, so try and put them out of the way or empty them as soon as you can. You can even do it automatically, which is the way I'm going to show you now. Now to link these together, look for the water out widget, which is the tap at the front. There's also a widget at the side of each, which is the water in point. So for example, we can link these together from the tap on the large into the side of the small, and this will automatically drain all the water into the small. You can even do it the opposite way around if you like, and drain the small into the large using the same method. You can link as many of these together. You can have various sizes, so don't worry about limits. So we need to get all the water indoors and somewhere safe where the thirsty nakeds aren't going to steal it. For this you can use a barrel. When you place a barrel, you'll see 2 points, water in at the top and water out from the tap at the front. Self-explanatory. Simply use use the tap from the catcher and link to the water at the top of the barrel. Water will automatically fill the barrel even when you're offline, and this can be your water supply. If you're lucky enough to live next to a river, they do look like this on the map. You'll have tons of fresh water. There's also lots of food next to a river as well. So one question is, how do you get river water into the barrels? Well, for this you can use a water pump. This is what they look like, and you simply place them in fresh water source. These pumps require electricity, and there's two widgets on these. One for water out and one for electricity in. Once you wire it to your circuit, the pump will turn on and begin filling. In order to see the correct widget, you must have the correct tool in your hand. Wire tool for the electricity and pipe tool for the water pipes. To pump this into your barrel, simply use the water out widget and link it to the top of the water in on the barrel. To disconnect previous connections, hold the right clicker on your mouse before left clicking to make the new connection. When you open the barrel, you'll be able to see the barrel filling with water, and jobs are good on. If you want to fill your barrel with multiple resources, this is where the combiner will come into it. You can connect the water catcher into the top of one of the points, then connect the out at the bottom into the top of the barrel. Once you've done this, it'll begin filling straight away. You've then got two more spacers in the top of the combiner to put a couple more inputs in, one of which is our river pump outside. So I'm going to connect this one now, and now as you can see it's filling much quicker. So now let's say you're next to the sea and you don't have space or the location for fresh water. Well, this is where the powered purifier comes in. You can simply place this thing anywhere, and it's probably one of the more complicated things to wire up. You need electricity, which goes into the side of the little motor here. Then you have to fill it with salt water, and it'll turn the salt water into fresh water. There's a few ways you can do this, but the idea of the component is salt water goes into the top of the black barrel and fresh water is produced from the bottom of the blue barrel. You can then use this to drink or water your crops with. Both barrels open up so you can see the contents of each. You can manually fill or empty either of these barrels using a water jug. So to fill it with salt water, open the black barrel, give the water to the machine and let the machine do the rest. If you want to automate this, you can use a pump the same way as we did with the pump in the river. This time, put the pump in the sea and then link the output of the pump into the top of the black barrel. It'll keep filling the black barrel until it's full. In the process, it'll be turning the salt water into fresh water. All you have to do is link the fresh water output into the final empty slot of the combiner, and this will be all three filling methods that I've shown you going into the barrel, keeping it topped up. If you try and link the water so it's going up too much of an incline, you will need a pump to get the water where it needs to be. It will give you a message as it has done here, but don't worry, because there's a pump in the circuit, it'll still work without an additional pump. If you're ever unsure if a component is emptying or filling, simply look inside of it, for example the barrel in this case, and you can see that it's emptying, so you're golden, you won't need that pump. So now we've got water sorted, all we have to do now is get it into our planters. Now I will be mounting the sprinklers on the ceiling naturally, so let's get building one. If you're ever unsure what you need, simply plant a seed. All you have to do is put it in your hands and then place in the planter. Once you've done this, you'll be able to see some stats. We need to concentrate on getting the bottom bars to 100% if we want high yield, good quality crops. Currently we've got light at 100% because it's out in the sun. Water's at 0 because we haven't got the sprinklers yet. Ground is at 75. We could do with topping this up with a bit of fertilizer. Temperature is at 100%. If you live in the snow or desert biome, you will have a bit of trouble with this. And overall is a mixture of the four needs. Be aware that the crop is only as strong as its weakest attribute, so even though we have 100% and 75% on 3 of the needs, because we have 0 on water, our overall plant health will be 0. Let's cover lighting quickly, as it's probably the easiest thing to cover. Crops need light. Simple. They either need access to sunlight or electric lighting. Don't try roof bars because they don't work at all. If you want your crops inside out of harm's way, just use the bog standard ceiling lights you can get. Once you've placed them, link them up to your battery and your plants will be 100% lit. That's how easy light is for your plants. Now we need to get back to watering these thirsty crops. Simply place the sprinklers on the roof. I usually put about 1 or 2 sprinklers per large planter, but it all depends on your crops and the amount you're planting. Even the genetics can come into it, but we'll cover that a little bit later on. Once you've placed the amount you need, you can link them up. They work similar to the electric lights. There's a line in and then a pass through to the next one. Again, it'll say that you need a pump. However, because there's a pump in the circuit already, the water transfer will still work. You will need to take the output into account. If you have a lot of sprinklers, the barrel can only output 12 at a time, so you will need multiple barrels if you have any more sprinklers than this barrel can handle. I'm going to quickly show you how to use the fluid splitter. It's not a heavily used component, but for this example we're going to place it on the wall and put the barrel out into the splitter in at the top, and then you can evenly distribute water to multiple areas of your base. If you need a pump, I'll show you how to work it now. Simply place it down. Make sure you've got enough power in from your electricity source to power it. This will light up the little light, and then when you flick the switch it'll turn it between green and red. I'm not going to explain the colours because it's pretty obvious what they represent. Once you have power, put the water from your water source into the input of the pump, and then you can put the output of the pump into any component you need to. Then you can turn the pressure on as and when you need by flicking the switch. In this case I've got it going into the sprinklers, so I can turn these on and off just by using this pump. When you look at the plot, you'll see water going up. One tip I've got is make sure the planter is full before you plant. Trust me on this, you'll thank me later. It's impossible to overwater your plant, so don't be scared to go mental with the water. So we've covered that, we've covered light, temperature. So let's work on the final component, the ground. You can increase ground by using fertilizer. Simply open a planter and you'll see a section for the fertilizer in there. Place the fertilizer in this area and that's all you have to do. Now to get fertilizer you will need a composter. You can place this out of the way in a corner. It doesn't need any power, it doesn't need water, so don't let it get in your way. When you open it up, there's some squares in the bottom right that you'll need to put food in. You can use any food. There is some foods that's better than others, but once you put the food in, all you have to do is play the waiting game. Once you come back a few minutes later, you'll see it's produced fertilizer ready to place in your planters. It's as easy as that. Now if you look at the plants, you can clearly see the overall going up with the lowest attribute. For example, water is 64, everything else is 100, but the overall will always stay to the lowest. The idea is to get everything up to 100 the best you can, and that'll give you the best quality crop. Water probably is the hardest thing to get to 100, which is another reason why it's best to completely water your crops the best you can before you even plant anything in there. That way you're giving the crops the best start in life and you only have to worry on the easiest attributes. Now there's lots of different types of seeds you can plant, whether it's for food, for cloth, or even ingredients to make the tea from the tea update, and all of them have different resiliences. So you've got the corn, you've got the hemp seed for cloth, you've got potato seeds which is the most resilient, and you've also got the pumpkin seeds. Pumpkins are really good for food. If you do find yourself running low on food, grow lots of pumpkins, you'll be fine with that. The berry seeds, you've got the white berry seed. These are for the teas and they're all 20% resiliences. You've got the yellow berry seed, the green, the blue, the black and the red, and you can plant these, grow the bushes, and then you can use the berries you harvest to create different teas to give you different perks. We're not going to go into that, that is a completely different video, but what I am going to do is show you what each crop looks like. If you can get away with it, I would recommend not filling your crops completely unless you've got really solid watering methods to keep these planters up to 100%. As you can see now, we've planted a handful, the water is still going up and it's on 86 or 81 in that case currently. What you don't want to do is have 9 plants in there all thirsty and have the water going down and you simply can't water them fast enough. Next thing, you end up with really poor quality crops. Don't rush straight into planting tons of crops. Do it nice and controlled, keep adding sprinklers, keep making sure everything is organised and controlled the best you can, and then start working on quantity. Now one thing at the top which you might notice is the genetics. Now there's a handful of letters that you have to remember, and there's also 2 different colours. The colours are pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain everything anyway. So first of all, your W, that's your water. If it's green, it means it's resilient to lack of water. If it's red, it means it uses more water than normal. G is your growth rate. Green means it grows faster than normal. Red means it grows slower than normal. You can get Y, which is your yield. This is how much harvestable crop you get from each plant. Green means you get more, red means you get less. H is hardiness. It's basically how hard the plant is. That particular factor doesn't really matter to you. All you're going to be interested in is the hardier the plant, the more you get once you've eaten it. For example, if it's green, it'll recoup your health and hunger greater than if it's a red H. Finally, you can get X. This is an empty slot. What usually happens with this is when you plant a crop with X, you'll get one of the other letters automatically assigned to that X to turn it into a red or green attribute. Hopefully green. Now, many people ask, what is the best attributes? Well, there's no answer to that because it all depends on what you're after. Are you after the looks and low maintenance, which means you want red Gs for growth rates because you want to slow the growth down just for cosmetics? Do you want to get the most bang for your buck and need green Ys for increased yields? Or do you just simply like scoffing your face full of as much food as you can get, in which case you want green Gs and green Ys for fast growth rate and increased yield? It all depends on what you want from each plant. Now, it is possible that throughout the crop's life, these attributes do get replaced. For example, looking at the green berry here, the G attribute has been replaced by a red W, which means it's going to take more water. If you look across that timeline, that's 2 red W's, which means in order for this to grow, it is going to be really thirsty. Personally, that's no good to me. So when it's fully grown, you have got an option. You can either take a clone or you can just harvest. I wouldn't clone this one because it's got no decent attributes to work with. I would just harvest it. Only look to clone the plants with the good attributes. Once you've selected clone, plant them, keep them watered and maintained, and keep your eye on these genetics. Keep them nice and green, or red depending what you're looking for, and only plant the best ones. Once you've found a gene pool that you like, you can plant these around other poorer plants, and the poor plants will inherit the clone's genes when they're in crossbreeding state. For example, the genes of a plant can be overridden if enough neighbouring plants all have the matching gene type in the same gene slot. For example, if a plant has an X gene in the first gene slot, but 2 other neighbouring plants have the Y gene in their first gene slot, then the first plant will have their X gene replaced with the Y gene. I hope I'm not losing you. It really is more simple than I'm making out, but it's all about choosing where to plant these specific plants. Don't just sling them anywhere. I would put the poorest plant in the middle and surround it with all the other clones in order for the centre plant to have its genes overridden with the stronger varieties. If it still doesn't make much sense to you, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll answer you the best I can. But in the meantime, let's get back into it. Now, I think I've covered everything. If there is anything you think I've missed, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. And as I mentioned before, I'll answer it the best I can. If I can't answer it, then I'm sure there's someone out there watching this video that can give you some good advice and give you some good pointers. If you ever enjoyed the video, you've learned anything, or you just enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like. I do release quite a lot of Rust videos, so if you do want to see more of these, feel free to hit the subscribe button. If you hit the bell notification, you will be notified when a new video releases, usually every Monday. You can follow me on the usual Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even join our Discord server as well. If you want to share your builds or just become part of the community, you're more than welcome. Feel free to swing by. If that does interest you, then all the links are down in the description. Again, if you've watched it this far, let me know you're a legend in the comments down below and I'll give you a little Anicod heart. Thank you again, and as usual, I'll see you in the next video.